what exactly is the nature of astrology? How do the planets influence us? And is it possible to somehow escape that influence? Now, before we can answer any of these questions, we need to know what archetypes are, because this is the backbone of astrology. So you can think of archetypes as basically just templates. Okay, they are universal templates guiding all that we might experience in the world, outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves. They could be psychological categories. So they could be like a kind of inner programming that guides us to seeing the world in certain ways, and that's probably part of it. They could also be cosmological powers that guide the way the universe actually structures itself, and that's probably a part of it too. So let me give you an example. You have an identity and I have an identity, and a tree has an identity and a dolphin does, and a planet and a galaxy and so on. Anything that exists in the universe that is seemingly separate from the rest of the universe that we could look at and say that's what that is, has an identity. It has some kind of a selfhood. And astrologically, the symbol that corresponds to this idea of selfhood is the sun. Okay? So each of the planets astrologically corresponds to a different archetypal field. Now, to give you another example, the planet Venus corresponds to the archetypal field of beauty, love, attraction. Now, the thing that beauty, that art, that love all have in common is the idea of harmony, is of things or beings coming together in a harmonious way. So we can obviously see this in a pair of lovers or friends, but we can also see this in gravitational attraction or in the way an atom holds itself together. And we can, of course, also see it in a work of art, in colors that blend harmoniously, or a piece of music in notes that go together to make chords. Okay? So archetypes are part psychological, part cosmological, and they have been conceived of at different times in history in different ways. So originally, we really just experienced them as gods and goddesses. And later on, we started to experience them more as psychological categories. And now we're moving into more of an understanding of their multidimensionality and the way that they inform everything from different angles, okay? Now, one of the advantages of thinking of them as gods and goddesses is that gods and goddesses have autonomy and they have a certain kind of power and they have a personality. So we can relate to them, okay? We can relate to them, we can understand them as being powers that have intentions for us, okay? One of the problematic sides of that is that we might feel subject to them, like the gods are playing with us and we are helpless victims. The advantage of thinking of them as psychological categories is that we can see things a little bit more objectively, and we can understand that we are prone to experiencing the world through certain lenses, and that those are only a little piece of reality. They're only a part of the picture. One of the really important characteristics of archetypes is the way that when they are activated, they tend to consume our whole world and being and perspective. So if you're seeing through the lens of a certain archetype, say you've got a really strong Saturn activated, or maybe a strong Saturn-Pluto activated, that can focus your attention in such a way that the world is a dangerous, scary place, split into good and evil, okay? But by the same token, because the archetypes are so expansive and contain so many possibilities of expression, that Saturn-Pluto archetype could also point to the ability to transcend that kind of more limited, stuck sense by bearing down with incredible effort and going deep to finding the real source and roots of that kind of paranoia. So, why is it that the archetypes might choose to express one way in one person and another way in another person, even if they have similar charts. This is because a number of other factors come into play that condition how they might express. We're born into a certain body with certain biological conditions, into a certain family, in a certain place, a certain sex, certain culture. All of these kinds of considerations come into play. And so when it comes to, how do we work with our charts, and is it possible to somehow escape the influence of the planets, right? If we experience something as hard or bad in our charts, is it possible to change that somehow? That's a complicated question, but what I think it boils down to is how able are we to change our stories and to change our neurological programming, because the archetypes seem to want to express one way or another. Like, I have never met anybody, no matter how awakened, no matter how evolved, how much work they've done, inner work and healing, etc., who does not powerfully express the archetypes that show up in their chart. So I just take that as a given, right? It's as inevitable as having the body that you have, right? But you can change, just like you can change your body in amazing ways. You can change the expression of the archetypes in amazing ways, but it's still going to be the same body, and it's still going to be the same archetypes. So what do we do? How do we escape the harmful influence, say, of something difficult like a Saturn-Mars square, or a Pluto conjunct the moon, or something like that? Well, first of all, I want to say that there's no such thing as a bad astrological aspect. There are ones, however, that are more difficult to handle, and they tend to be more difficult to handle because of the dissonance between the way that energy wants to move and what we tend to be comfortable with, okay? So we tend to be comfortable with things for a number of reasons, but a lot of it boils down to our conditioning, either family, social, cultural, whatever, or our neurological wiring, right? So if we have a very strong Mars placement, right, and Mars is basically just about vital energy, directed energy, the need to assert oneself and take up a certain space in life and take what is rightfully yours. If we have a strong Mars, right, but are uncomfortable expressing it, say we are a woman in Victorian England who's got Mars on the ascendant, square the sun or something, that's a very kind of warrior-like energy, and that's not something that historically a lot of women, especially in more repressive societies, have been encouraged to embody, right? There's going to be a problem there. So what happens if we have a strong Mars but don't know how to give it a constructive outlet is that it can come as outbursts, it can come through passive aggression, it can turn in on ourselves as a kind of self-hatred or depression or illness or something like that. But Mars in and of itself, in whatever aspect, is not bad. It's just energy that needs to find an outlet. So this is the important thing to think about when working with our charts. It's we can't change the chart, but we can change how we approach it, knowing that it wants something from us. I mean, the energies of the archetypes want to move in some way. And if there are problems, it's because that energy is blocked somehow. Now, of course, there are, freak disasters and tragedies and conditions that, might be beyond our control. And I don't want to make this sound so easy as to just do the right work, hack your brain in the right way and all your problems will go away. I don't think it's that simple, but I do think that there is a great deal that we are able to do that is within our control, but we have to get a handle on our conditioning, on our traumas and try to rewire our brains and rewrite our stories in the most conscious way possible. So I'll go into more depth in this in the next video. Okay? Thank you.